Hey guys, this is Kelly Powers of Berean Perspective. Thank you for joining today. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. If you haven't visited our website, rootedinchrist.org, please check that. And we're also in the iTunes section of the podcast under Berean Perspective as well. Well, thank you for joining today. I am going to give a very simple presentation on one verse, just one verse that dismantles Jehovah's Witnesses theology, organization, structure. Everything crumbles down on this one verse. If what they say on their theology is accurate, then they have to basically rewrite the Bible, or the Bible verse is right and their whole thing is wrong. Now let's set the premise. Now I've talked to Jehovah's Witness elders before. I've actually talked to a few of them over time. I've had them in my home. I've talked to them out in the streets. If you've seen some of my videos, I've talked to a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses over the years, and some of them have actually said to me, yes, Jesus is God, but he's not Jehovah, right? That's normally the argument. Or he's not the God, where Jesus is a God, but they'll even say that Jesus is a God with a small g or a capital G, right? So here's the question. Okay, so if Jesus can be a God, either capital G or small g, it really doesn't matter. So even though Jehovah's like to use John 1:1 to say, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was a God, right? Now that, of course, is a bad translation, because it doesn't even literally say that in the English, or in the Greek, sorry, because even in their Kingdom Interlinear translation, it actually says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and God was the Word. God was the Word. So there's no a, and God was the Word, right? So therefore, it kind of dismantles them. So even their own literature, their own book, dismantles that argument, right? But the verse that I want to focus on today, this one verse. Now, what's the foundational verse for Jehovah's Witnesses? Anyone know? If you've done anything with street witnessing or talking with them over the years, read their literature, where does the term Jehovah's Witnesses come from? Well, it comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 10. Now, this is where back in the day, Rutherford, he took over when Charles Russell died. I believe it's 1917, 1916. I'm getting that one wrong. But Rutherford took over. So he was the one who took over from Charles Russell. And they were in the beginning, back in those days, they had different nicknames, different titles, different names. They were called Russellites. They were called International Bible Students. They were called just Bible students. They were called Dawn Bible students. There's a whole bunch of different, words, titles they had. But in 1931, it changed. And that's when they became known as Jehovah's Witnesses, right? That's what took place. So since then till now, they are known as Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Now that comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 10. Let's go read that for a second. Isaiah 43, verse 10. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching this, I really hope you are watching this. The odds are you might not be. But if you are, I really ask you to listen to what's going to be shared here, because you're going to be very surprised that this verse actually just pretty much dismantles the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society's theology. And if you're a Christian watching this, please take note of this, because this will be a very good tool for you the next time you get a knock at the door, or you're talking to Jehovah's Witnesses in general. Alright, so I'm reading from the New World Translation. Normally that's what I like to encourage people is, if you are a little bit stronger in your faith, a little more mature, whatever, use their books, their sources, because they're going to look at other things. They're going to look at King James, New King James, New York Standard, and they'll read from it, but they already think it's biased, because they think, oh, it's been done by Trinitarians or whatever else. So I try to always use their source as much as possible, to use that where they can't say, oh, there's, something going on wrong, right? So here's the thing. Isaiah 43:10, in their translation, says the following. You are my witnesses is the utterance of Jehovah. So who's the one speaking? It's Jehovah. So Jehovah is the one speaking. Even my servant, whom I have chosen, in order that you may know and have faith in me, and that you may understand that I am the same one. Before me there was no God formed, and after me there continued to be None. Let's read that one more time. You are my witnesses as the utterance of Jehovah, even my servant whom I have chosen, in order that you may know and have faith in me, that you may understand that I am the same one. Before me there was no God formed, and after me there continued to be none. This is the foundational verse for Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, you will read it on their different literature, their magazines. So let's just go with the obvious right now. The one is speaking, it says here in the text, is the utterance of Jehovah, the Lord, Yahweh, right? What does Yahweh say? Now this is a verse that's used by Jehovah's Witnesses to declare they are Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So if you're a true Jehovah's Witness, you should know this verse pretty well, don't you think? Well, what does Jehovah say about who is God and who's not? Notice the latter part of the verse. Before me there was no God formed, and after me there continued to be none. None. Before me there was no God formed, and after me there continued to be none. Everything in this verse is really clear, and this is what makes this really important for sharing with a Jehovah's Witness. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness, this is going to rock your world in just a second. The word there for formed, look it up in the Hebrew. It says, before me there was no God formed. Formed is the Hebrew word yashtar. Y-A-S-T-A-R. It has the meaning to be formed, to be made, to be created, to be brought into existence. Alright? Woo! You know where I'm going with this already, don't you? So, this is what it says. Jehovah says there was no God formed, created, made, brought into existence before me. That's what Jehovah says, right? And now a Jehovah's Witness doesn't say, okay, that doesn't bother me at all. But now we got the problem of Jesus. Because Jesus in the Watchtower's theology is a created God. Both capital G and small g. They both acknowledge it. There's different places where they'll say he's called the mighty God. Right? He's called God in Isaiah 9:6. He's acknowledged to be called God by Thomas in John 20:28. Reasoning from the scriptures, their book actually says, we have no problem calling him God. He's just not Jehovah. Well, Jehovah says, there's no God before me, and there's no God after me. Therefore, there's no God, period, ever created. Now, there are false gods. Satan calls himself God, but he wasn't created that way. There are idols, but they're not true gods. There's only one God, right? And Jehovah says this, there's no God before me, made, fashioned, created, brought into existence. There's no God after me, made, fashioned, formed, created, brought into existence. Therefore, the doctrine that Jesus can be a created God, by what the Watchtower teaches in a lot of their publications, is false. It's inaccurate. Not true. It's unbiblical. It's heretical. It's blasphemous. It's false in so many different ways. So, what does this then say? This is basically saying, look, the Jehovah's Witnesses have been duped, deceived, blinded by the Watchtower and Bible and Tract Society. So then, okay, then how then can Jesus be God if this verse says there can be no other gods? Well, remember Jesus said in John 10:30, I and my Father are one, right? We are one. The Deuteronomy 6:4 says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. I have a couple of videos, 2 videos, on the doctrine of the Trinity, explained in simple terms, part 1, and in part 2 I go into the issue of how God is one, getting into the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And here's the bottom, quick version. When you look at the word one, it means one in nature or essence or substance, not one in number. There's a Hebrew word that says yechid, which has a completely different meaning, means one in singularity, where echad, E-C-H-A-D, can have various meanings, and in the proper context, a compound unity. So when Jesus says he and his Father are one, they are one in nature, one in essence. Remember in John chapter 5, the Jews were saying, you can't heal on the Sabbath. What are you doing? And Jesus says, I've been healing, my Father's been healing, and I've been healing. And they basically picked up stones because he was calling God his own Father. And he's like, what are you thinking? And like, you being a man, make yourself out to be God. He says, well, okay, well, hold on. Let's stop you. Let me explain this even more. And he goes on to say, not only is he doing what his Father did, but all honor is to be his in John chapter 5, 22 and 23. And he basically says, if you do not honor me as you honor the Father, then you're false, right? And he says the same thing in John chapter 10. John 14 verse 9 says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, Jesus said. So when Jesus is here, he is by nature God, but he's a distinct person. So this is the bottom line. Jehovah's Witnesses have been duped to believe false things. So this is the basic premise of to start that conversation and show, look, the Watchtowers lied to you. You need to understand that what you've been taught about Jesus is false, and what the Jehovah's Witnesses has been taught is false is not true, and this is what the Bible teaches. And from there, you can be praying about how to witness to them, pointing them to the true biblical Jesus of the Bible, who is known as Yahweh. John chapter 8, verse 53 through 58. Are you greater than our Abraham, our father, and the prophets? Whom do you make yourself out to be? Right? And then Jesus says, hey, before Abraham was born, I am. And they wanted to kill him. And the only reason it makes any sense biblically is because they believe that he was blaspheming the name of the Lord. Back to Leviticus 24:16. There's a whole bunch of others. But my point for this video today is simple, straight to the point. Isaiah 43:10 basically just tears down that wall of the Watchtower, crumbles it, dismantles it. You take them from the root and you just pull it out. The Watchtower has been lying to Jehovah's Witnesses. And this is a good verse to use. Going back to the Hebrew word form, it's the Hebrew word yashtar. It says to be made, fashioned, formed, created, to be brought into existence. Therefore, there was no God before, none after. So therefore, Jesus cannot be a created God. And that's one of the biggest foundations for the Jehovah's Witnesses and their organization. Hence, Clay Powers with the Berean perspective. I hope that this video has been good for you today. Please share some comments and questions. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. Visit our website, rootedinchrist.org, and also in the iTunes section for the podcast as well. And if you have some questions or thoughts that you want to share, please do it in a respectful way. Hope this video has been a blessing to you, for you brothers and sisters out there, and for your Jehovah's Witness. If this has rocked your world in some way, feel free to contact me through email or some other way if you don't want to do it publicly. I would love to talk with you and answer some questions. All right. Lord bless you. May you know Jesus Christ personally. Put your complete trust in him. Romans chapter 10, verses 9 through 13 says that if you believe that God has raised Jesus from the dead, believe in your heart that he was raised, call upon him, call upon his name, trust in him, you will be saved. It's not about the Watchtower. It's not about religion. It's not about all that. It's about knowing Jesus Christ personally. Lord bless.